All right, this is the fourth part of my lessons on the Civil War, and in this one, we're going to talk about the historical pattern or trend in the balance between North-South struggle over political power, which meant control over legislation, which ultimately meant control over their economic destinies or fortunes. All right, which is the bottom line. All right, so a federal political power in the United States is centered officially, anyways. I'm not going to get into anything more of non-official power in the Congress and the president. All right, recall there's three branches. You have the executive, you have the legislative, and you have judicial. Well, the judicial, Supreme Court, for example, isn't really, you know, flexing much political power. Right, it's Congress and the president. Right. Now, there's two chambers in Congress. You have the House, and you have the Senate. In the House of Representatives, the number of congressmen and thus votes is based upon demographics, number of voting people. In the Senate, the number of senators and thus votes is based upon statehood. You know, two per state, and that was a key factor in whether a state goes free or slave. From the ratification of our Constitution in 1788 and the founding of our nation, when we did that, right? The key battle line over struggle for political power was between North and South, right? Between 1788, ratification of the Constitution, and 1850, I say roughly, right? Right. Uh, that was the year of California statehood. There was an unwritten rule followed in an effort to maintain the balance of political power between North and South, and so maintain the peace. Namely, what it was for every slave state admitted to the Union, a free state would be admitted, and vice versa. Right? You want to try to maintain a balance here to maintain the peace, right? However, by the 1860 election, the eve of the Civil War, this balance, well, actually by 1861, say January, the eve of the Civil War, this balance had been disrupted irrevocably to the extent that the South saw the writing on the wall. It's clear as a crystal ball. The South, as a slave economy, was done politically and thus economically. The only chance of slave plantation elites to maintain the system that brought them great wealth for so many years was to check out of the Union. Right? They had to get out. Now, there were three elements to the Southern demise of political power. Right? We're going to talk about each of these. All right. The first one was the dominance of Northern Democrats, demographics, demographics. Right? They had the people, almost twice as many people in the North as in the South, and that's slaves included. Right? And slaves were only counted as 3/5 of a vote. The dominance of free statehood, which was only going to get worse. So there's more free states. The balance here I talked about, well, that's all disrupted. The last four states to be admitted all went free. Right, that's eight more senators than in the South, and that was only going to get worse. I'll show you what who was going to go free and who what were the chances of territories going slave, and it was, you know, grossly in favor of free. So it was just going to get worse. The fracturing of the Democratic Party into three. It split into Northern Democrats, Southern Democrats, and Unionists in 1860 on the eve just before the 1860 election, which meant their political demise too. So they're in all ways are done, right? They're done politically. It means they're done economically. They got to check out. This is what's driving things here. The key factors that brought about this shift in political power are found in the development of northern and western expansion economic symbiosis, right? So the north and west were like, they went hand in hand, right? They had different things going on here, but they scratch each other's backs, which forged a northwest political alliance. Now, the economic symbiosis formed in a similar manner as European colonialism, right? Where the colony served as a provider of raw materials for the industrial home country, as well as a market for the purchase of home country manufactured goods, right? But while the European colonial relationship was exploitive, as was our relationship to our neo-colonial countries, the U.S. West-North relationship was mutually beneficial, right? So it benefited both. It worked out in our case. The greater opportunities offered by the North and West in terms of resources and the economic system attracted far greater immigration, resulting in greater political demographic numbers. All right. It also increased the demand for free statehood to protect that opportunity. Right. So they got opportunity here and they want to protect it. Right. Northerners generally fiercely opposed slavery in their territories in order to protect jobs from slavery, protect their wages, protect land opportunities from the super wealthy slave plantation owners, and the northern business, financial, industrial leaders wanted to protect a wage-based economy, wage labor-based economy. Quote, by 1861, except for Texas, the states of the trans-Mississippi, west of the Mississippi, were little concerned with slavery and the cotton economy. Right? Really, you think about, okay, so Louisiana, Arkansas, all right, had cotton, and Texas, right? All the rest, right? None of them had any interest in cotton, right? In this area here, well, you can't grow much there, right? Like New Mexico, Arizona. All right. The acquisition of the new territory. So the third thing is the acquisition of new territories. Louisiana Purchase. Here's Louisiana Purchase. Mexican Secession, which is down here. I include Texas. Mexican Secession is like this, right? Man, you know, we stole Texas, so that included Treaty of Guadalupe. We didn't really rightfully own Texas until the Treaty of Guadalupe, and that was after we kicked Mexico's butt in the war, right? We just took Texas, we annexed it, gave it statehood in 1845. Why? Because we said so, right? We just took it, right? Nothing legal about it until we beat them in war and forced them to sign a treaty. All right, that's law. Okay. Uh, Mexican secession, and then Oregon Treaty, basically Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. All right. So all these territories. Now, as it turned out, each of these benefited the North. Why? Because the people wanted to have opportunity. They wanted to go free. All these are going to go free, which is going to severely shift political power to the North. Right? You see what I'm saying? I mean, it's not going to go well for the South. Right? So Missouri will be admitted as a slave state. Okay, okay. So wait a minute here. Okay, Louisiana Purchase. So Louisiana Purchase was 1803, right? Followed by the Missouri Compromise, 1820, and this is all about political power here, trying to split it, right? And so here's the Louisiana Purchase, right? This the 49th parallel up to this area here was set in a treaty with Britain in 1819. Right there, that British treaty, 1819, right? So this part of the Louisiana territory we lost, but we got this here, all right? We gained this chunk. That's a pretty good chunk there. All right, all right. So here's Louisiana Purchase territory, and what it said is, Louisiana went statehood in 1812. Was it 1812? Yeah. When Spain was getting whacked by revolution in Mexico, right? We were like, we'll just take this up to the Pearl River, right? So we gave it statehood, and then let's see here. So the Missouri Compromise said this. It said, okay, Louisiana is a slave state. Missouri can be a slave state, all right, but anything else above the southern border of Missouri will be free, which means only the small territory here, which is Arkansas and part of Oklahoma today. Oklahoma has its panhandle area over here today, right? But only this little territory is going to go slave, which means you got a much greater advantage of free states here. This is going to benefit the North, right? Okay. All right. So then we had Polk. coming in, manufacturing the Mexican American War, and the whole purpose was to get all this territory, especially California with the fine, Pacific ports, right? So we're gonna get all this, and he wanted this too. So he gets Oregon Treaty up here, then he gets a war with Mexico, manufactures that, gets all this, and rightfully takes Texas for the first time, all right? Right? So Texas had already been admitted as a slave state, 1848. But that was part of the manipulation to get Mexico to war, right? You send Slidell down there to negotiate everything, including everything about Texas, and then you take it while he's down there. Yeah, a neat little game. Although that wasn't really legitimate until we beat Mexico in war and forced them to sign the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which included the Mexican secession, all this other area, right? So that really includes Texas, as far as I'm concerned, right? So then in the wake of this, they're trying to figure out, well, what are the politics here? What's the balance of power here? So they came up with the 1850 Compromise, and they said that, all right, Texas got to go slave, so we'll make California free. All right. They wanted free. Why did they want free? Because they had mining interests. The 49ers, right? Right. You'd think they want these slave plantation owners coming in and gobbling up all the land. People wanted opportunity for themselves, right? Hell no, we're not going slave, right? So uh, then it said also that all the rest of this territory, which included Utah territory here, that's Nevada, Utah, and part of Colorado, Wyoming, right? And then all this area, which is New Mexico and Arizona, right? Uh, all this will go either free or slave, based upon the principle of popular sovereignty, right? And that's a principle that was thought up by Stephen Douglas from Illinois, right? It's a compromise thing here, and I'm thinking he's looking out for his self-interest, but I won't get into that. He's looking out how things are going to play out for himself politically, in an area where they're against slavery, and he's a Democrat, right? So he introduces that principle that what it said was, all right, so whether they go free or slave is based upon the people, either in a statewide or territory-wide vote in a referendum, or state legislator votes, which represents the people of the state, right? Okay, so we're. Oh, also they offered to beef up the fugitive slave clause in the Constitution with the Fugitive Slave Act, because people were, ignoring that, using local ordinances to say, screw it, you know, it's state right thing, right? This is taking away state rights from the North, right? The remaining Utah and New Mexico territories will be admitted on the principle of popular sovereignty. Yeah, right. Okay, so let's see here. This would benefit the North, right? With not only California going free, but Arizona would be declared free. When the war is going on, they would have the Arizona Organic Act and declare that free, and they're more likely to go free, anyways. New Mexico was leaning towards slave. Oklahoma was leaning towards slave, right? But everything else was free. It's like Nevada. They got big mining interests over there, right? They didn't want to go slave. What do you have here? You got right on the border. You got like Lake Tahoe here. You got Reno, Carson City. All that was like silver mining, some gold mining, right? Um, all right. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay. So in addition to this, after the admission of California, this set off a sequence of four states going free, right? You had California in 1850, you had Minnesota in 1858, you had Oregon in 1859, and then Kansas in January 29th of 61. So remember I said that they try to maintain a balance in statehood to maintain senators, right? You know, some parity in senators. Well, this is totally disrupted, right? Right. So it's heavily favoring now the North, and the overall effect of the Mexican secession would shift political balance to the North. Plus, it established the principle of popular sovereignty, which in the spring of 1860 would split the Democratic Party, which only which only undermined the South's political power further. All right, we'll talk about that coming up, right? So are, everything's going against the South, is what I'm saying. Then you had the Oregon Treaty. Oregon Treaty was a whole dispute with Great Britain where the line's going to be, and then you had Polk saying, 54-40, right? We're demanding that, right? And I don't know if he was serious about that. That would take away pretty much all of Canada's Pacific port access, right? I kind of believe it was probably using that more as a threat, as leverage for the negotiation coming up, in which they got the Oregon Treaty going 49th parallel cross here. Includes current Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. So there's Washington, Oregon's here. Idaho kind of comes like this, somewhat like that. It could be some of Montana in here, right? These territories preferred free to protect their own opportunities. For example, Oregon Constitution. Oregon was made a state in 59, right? And in the Constitution, they outlawed both slavery and black people, right? Thus, outlawing slavery was not for the benefit of black people, but rather their own benefit, for the benefit of white people, right? Again, this shifted political power to the North. Right? Okay, so summary of territory acquisitions. Each of the three major territory acquisitions, Louisiana Purchase, Mexican Cession, and Oregon Treaty, boosted Northern political power over the South. Right? So things aren't looking good for the South. And it's, the shift is against them. Then you had things like the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So the South sees what's going on. They're saying, man, we're screwed here. All right? We got to get some slaves in the North. So they had the Kansas-Nebraska Act when the Southern Democrats controlled, Congress. They passed this, and the law effectively nullified the Missouri Compromise. Remember the Missouri Compromise? Let's see here. You know what I should do? All right, that worked. Okay, so Missouri, remember Missouri Compromise said all territory above the southern border of Missouri, except Missouri. Missouri is a slave state. Right? Everything else is going to be free. Right? Only this little bit here has a chance of going slave. Right? But with the Kansas-Nebraska Act, it eliminated this restriction. So slavery can be above the southern border of Missouri. Right? But the problem was you're still not getting past the principle of popular sovereignty. All right, if the people don't want it, you're not going to jam this down their throats. Right? Otherwise, you're going to have a war. All right, Dred Scott case. So Dred Scott case was 1857. I don't want to get into the details of it, but basically the key outcome in terms of slavery was the Supreme Court ruling in the Dred Scott case eliminated any legal restrictions to slavery in the North. So basically, it was the last straw. I mean, you had Kansas-Nebraska Act. This is the law, right? But this was a Supreme Court ruling which said, okay, you can have slaves in the North, right? So now, basically, what it says is, the South won every right to have slaves in the North, right? But they're still not getting past the principle of popular sovereignty. You can't jam it down the people's throat if they don't want it. All right, so I want to say there's a phony argument that the North was blocking slavery in the North, right? So it's like the federal government is blocking, slavery. Well, no, the federal government lost everything, right? It's on the federal level. The South won every right for slavery in the North, all right? So with the combination of the Kansas-Nebraska Act and the Dred Scott case, the South had won every legal right to force slavery into the North. Therefore, the accusation that the North was blocking slavery in the North is unfounded, right? However, these two bits of law could not get around the principle of popular sovereignty, and the people of the North fiercely opposed slavery in their territories or states to protect their own jobs, wages, land opportunities, and industrial mass production, mass consumption, commercial economic system. For people who had the bigger picture of what's going on here, right? For the average person, it's this: jobs, wages, land, right? Thusly, the fight by the people to prevent slavery in the North was a matter of states' rights, and to force slavery upon them would require war, which the Southern elites could not fight without the Southern masses, right? And you think about it, what interest could you stir up in the South to say, "Hey, we're going to go north so that Southern elites can benefit by having slaves up there"? They're going to say, "Screw you! We're not going. We're not going to do that. Why should we fight for you to get your benefit in the North? It's not going to benefit us, right?" And what interest would they have in forcing slavery into some place where they had no personal stake? All right. So that's one element. Now we're going to talk about let's see, the state balance here. So let's take a look at the state balance, right? And in terms of free versus slave states, which has both affected both House and Senate, but mostly primarily in the Senate because there's two per state, right? Whereas you had the added element of demographics for the House, right? So the first states to be admitted to the Union were Delaware, New Jersey, 1787, both each, right? And you see how they try to maintain a balance going across here. Well, there's Ohio, right? Going across. Last two happened, or last let's see, last four happened pretty much around the time of the Mexican-American War, right? Florida, Iowa, Texas, Wisconsin. Okay, all right. And then, like I said, here's a shift. Then the next four to go: California, Minnesota, Oklahoma. So now the balance is disrupted. Right, that's 8 more senators. And then during the Civil War, you get Nevada, right? Why Nevada? Because they're a mining state. They want to go free, right? Nevada's up here. Okay. All right. Okay. So what am I saying here? So the balance is shifted, right? All right. Now this is a map of the United States based on climate. Yellow is desert areas. All right, and you see that this whole Arizona, New Mexico area is dominated by desert. Okay, so I say here in 1861, before the Civil War, on the eve of it, only New Mexico and Oklahoma stood a chance of going slave. So here's New Mexico. Here's Oklahoma. New Mexico territory is right here. Right, that's New Mexico and Arizona. All right. However, New Mexico was desert, unsuitable for slave plantation farming, and sparsely populated. Right. I got a quote by William Webster, or not William Webster. What the hell was the first name? I forget it. Uh, oh, Daniel Webster. Daniel Webster. A quote by Daniel Webster. William Webster was the director of the CIA. Yeah. All right. Okay, I got to. Yeah, he's saying, man, right? What are you gonna grow? In New Mexico territory with slave plantation system, right? Right? You barely got enough. You barely got enough to grow a little bit. He said you barely have to grow a little bit of wheat for tortilla. That's about it, right? That's what he says. Anyways, so New Mexico, has a chance to go enslaved. Oklahoma, right? Oklahoma was still Indian territory. Right? Remember after the Indian Removal Act, right? Well, you shove all these Indians with a trail of tears, and they're dying along the way. You make them go march across India into Oklahoma, right? That's still Indian territory, right? So New Mexico was desert, unsuitable for slave plantation farming, sparsely populated, right? Arizona, But half of New Mexico would go free with the organic Arizona Organic Act in '62. Nevada would go free in '64. Oklahoma was still largely Indian territory, and they couldn't vote, right? So uh, there's not much prospects for the South. You got a little territory here, which is mostly Indians, and they have no vote. You got this territory here, which is sparsely populated. Well, no one's there. I mean, it's just desert, right? Right. That's not going to add to your demographics, right? That's your chance. All the rest here is going free, right? This is bad. You think the people in the South didn't see this? They're like, our future is done, right? We're not going to stand a chance, especially if you get Western expansion economics and you develop this territory and people flood in there for opportunity. Man, you got a steam engine here that's is going to overpower you politically, right? Their only chance is to check out, right? Does that make sense? So let me read you. Let me read you a quote from John C. Calhoun. Right? I think Calhoun was a Secretary of State once. He's a senator. I think he's a senator here. And then I think he was a vice president. I think. Anyways, uh, so 10 years before the war, in 1850, John C. Calhoun predicted this, right? The coming political imbalance, right? And he said in 10 years it's going to be bad. He predicted the situation in 1860, right? What I'm saying is, right? He saw what's going on. Was Polk then called? Okay, so the two territory quote. So quote, two territories, Oregon and Minnesota, are already in progress of going free, right? And strenuous efforts are making to bring three additional states from territories conquered from Mexico. That's a Mexican cession, right? Which, this is probably California is one of them. This is probably before California was admitted. Which, if successful, will add three other states in short time to northern section, making five states and increasing the present number of states from 15 to 20 and of its senators from 30 to 40. Okay, so he's saying senators are the key thing here. On the contrary, there is not a single territory in progress in southern section, and no certainty that any additional state will be added to it during the decade. The prospect then is that two sections of the Senate, should the efforts now be made to exclude the South from the newly acquired territory succeeded, will stand. Yeah, that was fixed with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Before the end of the decade, 20 northern states to 12 southern, right? And that's an exaggeration of what happened, right? There 40 northern senators to 24 southern. This great increase of senators added to the great increase numbers of the House of Representatives and Electoral College in the part of the North. That's demographic imbalance, right? He's talking about, which must take place under the next decade, ending in 1860, will eventually and irretrievably destroy the equilibrium which existed when the government commenced. Remember I said they try to maintain a balance between North and South, equal number of states, right? He's saying this is going to be effectually and irretrievably destroyed, right? Where did I go here? All right, so thus Calhoun predicted that by 1860, the North-South political equilibrium which existed when the government commenced, will be effectually and irretrievably destroyed. Right? And Southern political power was destroyed, and therefore the only hope of the South was to check out the Union. But this required war, and the Southern elite were too few to fight it. Therefore, they had to rally the Southern masses to fight their war, and the chief means was fear mongering, manufacturing the false threat that the North was going to free the slaves. The other means was a series of laws that cornered every Southern white male who wasn't going to be, who wasn't stupid enough to fall for this fear mongering, right? Right? Like I said, a lot of whites down there were smart enough to say, man, this is a rich slave plantation owners war. I'm not fighting this war for them. Oh yeah, you are, right? They had laws like you can lose your property, right? What does that mean, right? You go to jail, you lose your property, your family is done. What are they going to do, right? You're in jail, you can't make a living, right? They have no property, right? I mean, right? They're passing laws to corner them. Um, okay, so Okay, so here's the thing. So the only territories that have a chance of going slave additional is Oklahoma, mostly Indian territory, right? They're not going to add to the voter rolls, right? And then New Mexico. This is like it's no good for slave plantation farming for cotton or anything else, right? And it's sparsely populated. This is no political advantage, right? Everything else is going free, including probably Arizona, including Nevada went free, right? Utah would go free, right? So the South knows they're done. Does this make sense, right? Politically, they're done. So now we'll take a look at the demographics, right? So now we'll examine how the Southern political demise was exacerbated by territory-wise, they're done, and it's only going to get worse. Demographics, they're done, and it's only going to get worse. Both ways, it's only going to get worse. So on the eve of the Civil War at the 1860 election, the North held a roughly, it was 1.8, right? 1.82 here. 2-to-1 advantage over the South in population. And that included slaves. And slaves only counted 3/5 of a vote. Right? That's in the Constitution. Constitution, I spelled that right. Right? Actual numbers of population, well, here's the actual numbers, right? According to the U.S. Census. All right. Now, the great imbalance would grow even worse with one, all the remaining territories going free except for Oklahoma and New Mexico. It's just going to go worse. Oklahoma and New Mexico, right? There are barely white people there. Continued immigration into the United States with the vast majority going north, right? So I'll talk about this in a second. The growing opportunities in the north that would attract more people. All right. Right? So you got more opportunities in the North. You got land, right? You got the Republican Party promising free land. The immigrant contribution to this imbalance can be seen in U.S. Census data, especially in the period between 1840 and 1860. So here's this slug here. You see this little bump here? There's a bunch of Europeans coming over, white immigrants, all getting naturalized, all getting the vote, right? And where did these go? U.S. Census data for every 10 years 1840, 1850, 1860. 9 out of 10 went north. Right? Why? Because there's no opportunities in the South. Unless you want to be a sharecropper. All right? Scratching out a living, dirt poor, paying some scumbag who you hate. All right. Okay. So why was there a bump here? All right, some factors in the surge of immigration, 1840, 1860. Britain relaxed its immigration restrictions. Remember, Britain was the first one to really have a formulated, coherent mercantilist policy. Part of that was, hey, we make our money with manufactured goods, with value added. That's where you make your money, right? You don't want to let any skilled workers out of your country, especially if they have manufacturing skills, all right? You prevent them legally from leaving your country. You don't let them go to the competition. You don't let them go to Germany or France or United States, whatever, right? Right. But they relaxed that. They relaxed their trade restrictions because it was largely to their advantage at the time. They had industrial advantage, and they're going to use that. They're going to use free trade, right, with their industrial advantage to their advantage. Um, All right, so this is part of that. So they relaxed their immigration restrictions. Then you had the Irish potato famine, all right, in 45 to 49, and they're starving, so we got to get the hell out of here. Then you have pandemic European revolutions. This is mostly Central European stuff, all the Germanic states. I don't know what the hell they were, right? Saxony, Brandenburg, Prussia. I don't know what the hell they were. All those different places, right? And then also you had Austria, maybe like Czechoslovakia, whatever. What the hell else? Maybe parts of Poland. Um, all right, Poland didn't exist at that time. Yeah, it was out. It was out of existence. Um, okay, bad economic conditions. Oh, so there's also bad economic conditions in Europe. Plus, you had the California gold rush that attracted a lot of people. That's probably a big spike here. Yeah, right. Advent of steamships. So that made it cheaper and easier to go across the Atlantic. You had the first transatlantic steamer, Cunard Company, the famous company that built the Titanic and Lusitania, right? They had a steamer right around 1840, right? It was kind of like a hybrid sail steamer. Um, so yeah, U.S. Census data showed 9 out of 10 immigrants went to the north. That's packing the voter rolls, right? Um, I believe, though I don't have data on this. Here's another factor. Now, don't take this serious because I don't want you to attack this. Focus all attention, right? Make a big wave attacking this. But I'm thinking this. This is just This is just reasonable, right? Not only do you have people, Europeans immigrating to the west, north and west. Yeah, I'm willing to bet there's Southerners, right? Because they lack so much opportunity in the South, they're like, man, let's go to the northwest, right? And that opportunity poor Southerners may have immigrated north and west to free territories. If so, they, more than anyone, would fear slave plantation owners coming in, gobbling up all the lands, forcing them to be sharecroppers at best, right? Also, their political alliance would likely flip from south to north, right? What? Because this is their interest now, right? Right? Um, I admit I don't have any hard evidence for this because I haven't seen the data for this, but you know what? It's just logical. So I'm sure it happened to some extent, although I don't know how much. Right? It's just a guess. So we'll leave it as that. It's a hypothesis. Although it's totally logical, it's a hypothesis. So don't attack it. Right? I know people will try to attack the weak point. Um, Shift all focus there. And then say, see, it's all bullshit because, one little point. Right? That's just a hypothetical, but it's totally reasonable. Now we'll examine the final element of Southern political power demise that necessitated secession: the fracturing of the Democratic Party into three. All right, and this will be the end of this section, I think. Yeah, we'll stop there. All right, so on the eve of the 1860 election, all right, in February, the Unionist parties in 1860, the Unionist party split off, composed mostly of the people from the southern, the border slave states. Let me get a map here. Let's see. Do I got a map? I should get a map. Let's see here. Border states here. Where are the border? Uh, well, let me look here. What? No. Oh, yeah, there. That'll work. All right. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, but all right. So Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. Those are the five states who stayed with the Union, but they were slave states. All right, those are the border states. So what am I saying here? Where? Okay, so these guys formed the Unionist Party. A nickname for this was the Unconditional Union Party, right? What I mean is they're saying that we're going to stay with the Union. Why? Because these states, even though they're slave states, their economies were tied with the North. The North was their market. This is their sugar daddy, right? Right? They're not going to go against this. They have nothing in the South, um, or I can't say nothing, but far less. They're dependent upon the North. The Unionist Party was unconditionally committed to membership in the Union. They selected Bell as their candidate for president. Then, in April 1860, at the Democratic Convention, Democratic Party split further into Northern and Southern Democrats, with the Northerns committed to the principle of popular sovereignty, while the Southern Democrats held to absolute slavery demanded in the North. The Northern Democrats, the Northern Democratic candidate was Douglas. Southern was Breckinridge, right? I mean, think about this. The people in the North were dead set against slavery. If you're a Northern Democrat, there's no way you're going to say, yeah, we're going to have slavery no matter what. I mean, you're just going to be run out of town, right? There's no way you're going to get reelected, right? So they had to say, okay, you were for slavery, but we'll leave it up to the people. Then the people would say, okay, all right then, fine, all right, we'll accept you, right? So what I'm saying is, Northern Democrats stood no chance if they stuck to the hard party line of the South, or we're demanding absolute slavery. So because they're going on the principle of popular sovereignty, right? And the South says, no, you can't have popular sovereignty because that's going to kill us. That means all these territories are going to go free, right? Their only hope is to demand absolute slavery. So that causes split between the Northern and Southern Democrats. So what that means is they fragmented into three. And look what happened, right? Especially with the presidential election. So here's the 1860 election results for the president. Here's electoral votes, right? Here's Lincoln, Douglas, Breckinridge, Bell. Republican, Northern Democrat, Southern Democrat, Unionist Party, right? 180 electoral votes. Douglas got only 12, right? There's no chance. And then Breckinridge got 72. That was the second closest, not even half. 90 would be half of Lincoln's. He's not even close to half of what Lincoln got. Then Bell had 39, right? Okay, because these guys were slave states. Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. Yeah, he won. All kind of states, right? Only Missouri. Okay. And okay. All right. So what I'm saying, Lincoln had more. This is about 113 or so. So all combined here, these guys added to 113 electoral votes. Lincoln had more than all those combined, right? They didn't stand a chance with the split. They didn't stand a chance otherwise, anyways. All right, so let's review the Southern political demise. The North had double the demographics, slaves included, meaning control the House, right? The North had more states than the South, meaning control the Senate. The demographics would only get worse with the immigrants pouring into the North and the West and not the South, right? The state balance would only get worse with all the territories going free except for Oklahoma and New Mexico, which were insignificant as far as demographics. The Democratic Party split into three, destroying its chances, especially for president, as shown by the 1860 election here, right? All this meant that the South totally lost political power and was only going to get worse, right? As more states came into the Union, they're all going free, right? More people flooding into the North, right? It's done already. No political power, no control of Congress, no control of legislation, no control of economic policies, economic demise for both the moral tariff, which would kill the cotton economy, and Western expansion economics, which would expand the wealth and population of the North, furthering the South's political demise. Right? This is going to just benefit the North. The only hope of the South was to check out of the Union, but this would mean war. And there were too few rich elites to fight, less than 1%. So they had to scare up support with fear-mongering. North is going to free the slaves. When I proved to you that was no threat at all. So this is the real political reality on the eve of the Civil War. Not the phony threat of the North is going to free the slaves, which you read in history books, right? People are actually simple-minded enough to believe that because the South blabbed this fake threat, it was true, right? I swear. You hear people say, oh, you know what the absolute proof that the North is going to free the slaves? Well, the Southern states said so, right? I mean, Jack. You think people don't lie? You think people don't have ulterior motives? Right? I mean, I swear. Such people are too simple to realize that people don't always tell the truth. They're too simple to realize that people often have ulterior motives. They're too simple to realize that some people are clever and manipulative. They're too ignorant to know that there was zero chance of abolition passing Congress at that time or even being ratified by 3/4 of the states. Zero. Not even a bill. Right? Too ignorant to know that the Northern politicians, including Lincoln, did all they could to guarantee protection of slavery and promotion and expansion of slavery. You know, if only New Mexico and Oklahoma stood a chance of going slave, they said take New Mexico, right? No one else. They say, hey, take Oregon. You think, or take Washington or whatever. The people go crazy. New Mexico stood a chance, so they said take New Mexico. Too ignorant to know that after the North cut the legs from under the South's argument for war, which is freeing the slaves, the South still clamored for war, right? Which means they had bigger ulterior motives, all right? All right, so I'm going to cover this in a separate lesson. It'll be real quick, but it'll be separate.